Happy's back this week. Just doing some oddball cleaning up and sorting out and just trying to unload some of these boxes and separate this stuff and find a home for it. I got plenty of places to put it. I just got to get it all into groups. And I talked last week a little bit when I was putting up this pegboard. I'm going to try to clear out this area over here and take these two engines and put them along the back wall. So I got to clear out the back wall area of just boxes and make room for those engines. And I want to clear this area out first and then work my way over there. But that's what I'm up against. So with that said, I did come across one thing I wanted to go over. I've been watching videos of all the guys, rescuing cars and so forth, buying old cars and going and picking them up and getting them to run. I've been doing that for a long time. But the one thing that seems to aggravate me the most was they just take, and pour fuel down the carburetor and kind of spill it, and I'm always worried about a backfire. A lot of times you're out in the woods somewhere, and if it catches fire, it's going to burn up the woods and everything around it. But I found something I haven't seen. Maybe they are using it, but I haven't seen it on film or on these videos. I ran across my little squirty bottle. You can buy these. You can buy these at not five and dime anymore. It's a dollar store or $1.25 store. I think it's gone up due to inflation. But you can buy a couple of these and fill them up with gasoline. And like here's a carburetor here. And the good thing about it is if you don't cut the tip off, you just leave just a little opening, it'll work perfectly. And you can put it right on the float bowl and fill that bad boy up. And same back here. And you just put it on there, and you don't spill it all down all over the carburetor. Because if you have a backfire, you're going to have a big fire. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd use these little bottles. That's what I would do. Anyway, that's just a tip. Because I have caught a few on fire. I always carry, well, here's a fire blanket here. You can carry something to smother it out. Just have that on hand too. Or a fire extinguisher. I know nobody wants to use the fire extinguisher though, because all that white powder, it gets all over everything, gets down in the engine and everything. So one of these fire blankets though would be a good solution too when trying to start one of these cars. But I've rambled on enough about that. I've just got to get this mess cleaned up, and that's what I'm going to do is just get going and you can watch me work. Okay, I guess that about sums it up for this week. We got all these engines behind me moved into place, and that's my goal. I wanted to get some organization, so now I've got room, and I don't have those things in my way, to finish cleaning up the shop area, where the work area, where it's going to be, and I can move other stuff, a lot easier than I can those engines. I can go through them real quick and show you what we've got. I don't know if I have or not in the past. I can't remember, to be honest with you. I've got 5 of them over here. One of them is just a single cylinder Briggs & Stratton, 15 horse. It's a big boy for 1 cylinder. I don't think you can pull start it, although it has provision to put a rope on it. It had some type of electric belt-driven starter when my dad had it on an old Simplicity mower back in the 70s. And my brother had kept that engine for years, and then he passed away, and I've got it now, and it's since just been sitting so long it's locked up. But that might make a cool project someday, but that's down the road. And then I've got a 350 engine that came with the that one engine stand. There's just a block with 4 pistons missing out of it. It does have the crank and 4 rods. I don't know quite all the story on it. I do know it was a 93 K10 1500. It was standard bore, and he tried to replace the pistons for some reason and not bore the block, which he put a brand new set of standards in it, and he just never was happy with it and ended up getting something else, and then he gave it to me along with his engine stand. So that's where it sits. But it's a rebuildable engine. I'd need a rotating kit to go in that. It's a good solid block, I know that, standard. Okay, and next to it is the one in the middle, right there. It is a 370 cubic inch small block, built by Frank Oglesby. We built that for my son's Camaro. It's 3 5/8 stroke, 350, bored 30 over. So it makes it about 370 cubic inches. It's got the splayed full bolt main caps, billet caps that Bowtie put out years ago, and I found those on eBay, and he went ahead and line bored it and replaced those, and we put a forged steel crank in it. It's got probe pistons, I think it was, 30 over. They're very short skirt, and it's got I-beam rods, the high dollar rods in it. It's a knockoff of the Kroller rod, and then it's got ZZ4 aluminum heads, and it's got 202 valves. He tried to get them in there, and they wouldn't quite fit, so the intake valve is a 2-inch. It's just the ZZ4 head just couldn't accept it. They came with 194s. And he improved the flow the best he could. That's a long story. We'll get to that another day, but he wanted me to buy another set of heads, although the ZZ4 head I took him was going to be the center of the original engine, and he just kept on and on, and he got me to build this monster of an engine. It's a lot more than we really needed, but we were trying to go for a record back in those days. But anyway, that's said and done on that one. You can see some of the stuff where we ran that engine in my son's 79 Camaro, some of the older videos. And then the 455 next to it, it's bored 30 over. It came from a company in Florida back in the mid-90s. They built it for a roommate of mine. And he had a Firebird, just like the one I'm building now, basically. It was a Firebird Esprit. It was an old Davis rental car. And it was a 78 Firebird, just like what we're building. And he put that engine in it and put a Turbo 400. And then he sold me the car at a really good price I couldn't pass up back in the 90s. And I ended up putting a gear vendor's overdrive in it, and I was in the process of putting a one-piece fiberglass front end. I always liked a lighter weight front end on them. I like the round headlights from the 70 through 73, and I had grills and everything for it. And I never did finish that project, and then times got bad. I had to sell it all at a real bargain price. So Never did complete that one, but I did manage to keep the engine. Turbo 400's gone. I do have the gear bender overdrive, um, but I'm not an automatic guy. It came with it, so that's the only reason. And it made it more interesting when I put the gear bender overdrive in there. It allowed me to at least start shifting again. And it made that 3-speed into a 6-speed. And that's a pretty cool deal. So even as an automatic, that was a fun car. It really did get up and go. But with that said, that's all of my engines there. Like I said, that 350 or that 455 Ford 30 over is a 462, I think it comes to. And that's what's going to be going in the Firebird that we're working on now. And I've got to go through it. It's been sitting without being run, I guess, since 2011. And I oiled it down, and that's the way it's been sitting ever since. So probably needs to just be gone through and pull the heads, everything off of it. I know it had a pretty bad rear main seal leak, had the rope seal. And I'd replaced it once, and I didn't get it right, apparently, and it still seeped a bit. So I found another one-piece rear seal you cut by BOP. You cut it in one place, and then it's the way you set it in there, and it eliminates that rope seal. I'm going to give that a try. A couple of friends have used them and had real good success, so I'm going to tear it apart, and I'll replace that rear main seal when I'm doing that, and we'll get it all cleaned up and painted and put it on the old engine start stand, make sure there are no oil leaks before it goes in the car. That's my plans anyway. That's what's coming in the near future is we'll get back on that Firebird and get that car all painted up and everything, then we'll put this engine in it. But I still got more work to do to this garage. I want to build some kind of a driveway to come down to here. So I found that dump unit. I might try to put that in the little Ranger. That's just going to be a short project. So I can haul gravel in and out of here without all that shoveling. Because it's going to take a lot to build the roadway that I need, or driveway, down to the garage. So I'm not getting stuck every time it rains and so forth. I want to make it a little bit more civilized. But anyway, that's where we're at. That's it for this week. And until next week.